You must use these plugins that I'm going to show you in this video if you are using Figma to create your design system and design library. So bear with me until the end of this video. My name is Kia and here's a Kimo. Welcome to my channel. We will be using the plugins that I'm going to show you in this video in order to create and manage the variables within the Figma file. Therefore, I believe it's very important that you and I have a common understanding of what exactly tokenization process means and why do we need to use variables. So you can skip this part if you want to just watch the part that I'm talking about the plugins. But before you skip, don't forget to smash the subscribe button if you're new here. And if you haven't done yet, like this video and share it with the other designers in the community. Design libraries are basically a collection of all the components that we can use within our digital product, plus every piece of information and guideline that everybody should be aware about it within the project, regardless their role. Design libraries that we are building supposed to be the single source of truth, meaning that if anybody has any question about a specific part of the product, they're supposed to find their answer within the design libraries. It doesn't matter if it's about the how to use a specific component or the visual and appearance of that component. And of course, we're gonna use the design libraries within the development process as well, meaning that the developers are going to pick up the components and designs that we have within the library and then convert them to code. That means that our design library should provide them everything that they might need in order to be able to convert the designs one by one to code with the 100% accuracy. In past, before having the concept of the tokenization, we used to design our UI elements, and developer used to basically take our design, inspect it, and find out which values we used for which part of our design, for example, the color or the sizes, and they supposed to interpret this design themselves in their own way and recreate it within the code environment. Of course, this approach was working, but there were no proper bridge between design and developers, and that self-interpretation of the design that was happening by developers were kind of building a gap between the design and the final code. And it was reducing the accuracy, it was building some gap. So to avoid that, we started to build a common language and a bridge between design and the code environment. And tokenization process is basically one step toward building this bridge and connection between designers and developers. In tokenization process, we basically extract and define the properties that having impact on our design. For example, if you design a UI element such as a button, there are some properties that are defining the appearance of your button, such as the border, such as the, the background color, the text color, the style of the text, and everything else. And if we build the agreement between what are those properties that having impact on your element in the design end, and we consider the same exact properties in the dev team, we basically build a very concrete connection between design and dev end. Now we have some properties and tokens that we're going to use exactly the same properties and tokens both in the design end and dev end to build our component, our UI element. So we need to assign specific values to each of these properties to build our UI element. Let's check the example that I mentioned before. For example, the button. If we want to have a red button, we need to change the properties background color for the button to red. So we need to assign value red or the hexacode that we want to assign to it in the design end. And then the developers who want to change the background color of the button to red, they can come and check exactly the same token, the same properties, and pick up that value for that element. And variables are the entities that we use in order to store these values for the specific properties, for the specific tokens. We use a proper naming convention that will clarify what this variable is going to be used for, like which token this variable is going to get connected later on. With that, we both in the design end and the dev end going to talk about exactly the same stuff, the same concept when we design something or when we change something in a specific design. Now that you and I have the same understanding of what exactly the tokenization means and what variables are going to do for us, let's jump into the Figma and see how we can create and manage variables within our design tool. I assume that you're familiar with the Figma a little bit at least, so you should be able to recognize this view, which is basically our initial state of our Figma file when we start to create a new Figma file. In the right side, in the design panel, when we are not selecting any element within our design canvas, so let me just show you, for example, if I create one frame and I select the frame, I see all the design properties that are relevant to the selected component or element. But if I select somewhere on the canvas, then we see the design properties or the settings that are relevant to whole project, to whole file. Here we can find the variable section, variable option. And if we select on or click on this setting icon, we will be able to open the variable panel. There are a couple of new updates for the Figma. For example, one of them is this one that we can click and go to the full screen mode for the variable panel, which is very cool. I will also show you the rest of the new updates and features that we can find it within the variable panel later on. But let's create one new variable together. The only thing you need to do is you need to create variable by clicking on the create variable. And here you can choose among the type of the variables that we can create. It depends on which values we want to store in this entity. For example, if we would like to just store the value for the color, we can use the color. We can use the number if we are storing just a number. If we store a string, we can use the string type. And if we have a variable that we would like to store 0 or 1 or yes or no, or the Boolean value, we can use the Boolean. For now, let's create one color type. And when you create a color type, you should be able to see such a view, which is basically showing your collection, which I'm going to show you what is exactly collection going to do for us. And we see the list of all variables in the left side, and we see the variable themselves here in the right side. Here you can change the name of the variable in the way that you want. For example, name, usage, I don't know, properties. It depends on your naming convention, that how you want to build your name here. But there is one kind of trick to structure your variable, which is like this. So basically you can write down your name and use the slash, and then you can write down the rest of the naming, for example, name 2. And then when you enter, you will basically build hierarchy. So now you build a group, and in that group you have the other variable. In this way you can build multiple groups in order to organize your variables. For example, I can now use the slash again and make another variable, which is name 3. So now you can see that I made one group, second group, and then the name 3 is down there in the hierarchy. Here we have another option on top, plus, which is going to help us to create a new variable mode. And now if you see on top here, we have mode 1, mode 2, that we can also rename them, which I'm not going to do it now. But we use modes in order to store different values for one same variable. For example, name 3, which was basically the color variable that I made, now can have two values. For example, red or white. It depends on which mode we are. And we can go also further and create more modes. It depends on our project, the structure of the variables that we are building. The other thing that is very important in variables is to click on this one, and you have control on different properties related to that variable, which is very important and handy, including the coding syntax. If you are using a specific naming convention between you and your developers, it's very, very handy to define it here by clicking on the plus and define which kind of technology you are using, and then use the proper naming convention here. In that case, your dev team will see exactly what they're supposed to see. So there is agreement, they are expecting to see exactly the same name, and they will see that name. The other setting stuff that you can find here is the scope. If you switch to the scope tab, you can define where exactly this variable can be used later on. This will help you to organize your design files. For example, if you define a variable that you don't want to use it for the fill, you can turn this off. And the next thing is, of course, creating collections. If we want to organize our variables a bit more, again, based on the architecture of our variables, it depends on kind of how we want to manage our variables. We can create a new collection. This means we can have multiple collections of the variables within one project and use it for different purposes. And you can switch between different collection by opening this drop-down menu and switch between them. You can of course rename them by clicking on this three dot here, rename them, or you can delete them, or very important, you can reorder the collections based on your need. For example, you can bring the collection to the up or down. Actually, I did not want to talk about the basic information of the variables within the Figma, but I did. I hope you find it also helpful or you learn something new from it. But now let's jump to the main part, which was the two plugins that I believe we must use. Make our variable creation process faster, more efficient, plus we be able to manage our variables much easier. The first variable that I'm gonna show you is going to help us to create variables, and we don't start from empty panel. Before I do it, let me open the variable panel. I want to delete everything we have, so I'm going to delete the collections. I close this one, and then I am going to open the action menu from here and then come up here. I already have it in the recent because I opened it, but if you want, you can go to the plugins and widget panel tab, and here you can write for Kigen. Yes, you click on start, and you start the plugin. Here you immediately see that it has a very simple user interface. In the left side, you can see the basically type of the variables, for example, for the typography, for the sizes, and you have also some options which is going to be very handy later on. For example, exporting the whole variables that you have in your file to hand it over to your developer. This is a very important part of using variables, to be able to kind of hand over your variables to dev or find somehow a way to connect these two together. Let's start from the color. I want to create a couple of color. What we can do is we can choose among the color styling and standard used by different design system, which is a very, very nice touch. For example, I can use, I'm not sure, material design, and here the colors are going to get generated based on that. We can maybe choose among the colors that exist. We can say which color we would like to add to our variables. Plus we can edit them. So in the edit window, you can easily change the primary color that you want to use, and you can even change the name of it. For example, here I can change this to something else, which I'm not going to do, and then it's going to do the scaling itself. Plus we can use we can change the algorithm of scaling here based on the design systems. This also will help that how many shades we would like to generate, and contrast shifts how much percent it should be. So we have everything that is needed for doing the color scaling and creating the color variables. You can pick the colors you want, you can adjust them, and after that you can generate your colors. It might take a couple of seconds, and when you're done, it also shows 284 colors variables we are going to add to our Figma file. And after this, when you open your variable section or variable panel, you will be able to see all the colors that you define within the plugin here as a variable. This is very, very nice. You don't have to create the colors one by one here. And more important than everything else, you don't have to do the scaling yourself. So you can define your color. It's going to do the scaling itself. The other feature, the new feature that exists within the Figma in the variable panel, is search option. So here you can search for the variable based on the variable name or amount. And here you can do the filtering to filter out the type of the variables that you want to find. This is going to help a lot when you want to change the value for a specific variable later on. Here in the plugin user interface, we can find the semantic section or semantic tab. This will also help us create our semantic level variables, which I didn't actually explain. But the semantic level is the variables that are going to define the usage of the variables. For example, here we have this theme collection, which you can find in order to define the primary color, primary light, and primary dark. So some variant of the primary, some variant for the secondary. And then we can define, for example, which color is supposed to use for the surface and how is the surface behavior on different color theme, and the rest of the usages for the color. For example, the state, the typography colors, blah, 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 blah. And if you click on this one, you basically will create another collection of the variables. So here you can find now your semantic level with one click. You could also adjust the values in a way that you want based on your product. But it was very fast and it gives you everything that you need. We can continue creating our variables. Let's go to the typography section. If you have made a typography style for your design library, you should know that there are many variables that you need to create and connect to your style, and that's going to be a very difficult process. These are the properties that you need to create variable for them individually. For example, the style name, the font family, font size, line height, letter spacing. These are the things that you can define here in the plugin directly, and then do the scaling and everything else, and then generate the typography token. Immediately in the right side, we can see that not only the tokens, the variables has been generated, also we have the stylings here. And if we open one of the styles, you can see that the properties regarding and related to these styles are connected to the variables that we have made, or the plugin actually made. Let's now go back to our variable panel. And here I see a new collection, which when we open it,
we can see a lot of variables that has been grouped based on their usage for typography. For
typography
example, font family,
based on the
weight
grouped
of the
by
font, or the line
properties
height,
that they
or the
are
rest.
going to. This was the first plugin. Let me know if you're using it and share your experience with me, what you like about this plugin the most and what bothered you actually in the process. You can share your thought and opinion in the comment section with me. It's very valuable for me to understand how you think. And you can also join to the Discord server that we have. You can share your opinion there as well. But now let's jump to the next plugin. We have created a lot of variables using the first plugin. Now I want to show you another plugin which will help us to organize all the stuff, all the variables that we have within our design. So let's go back to Figma. The name of the next variable is the variable visualizer, which I have it here in the recent tab. You can again search it in the plugin and widget tab. Let's open the variable visualizer plugin, and when you open it, you will see such a view. Just don't get overwhelmed. I'm going to explain what exactly is happening here. But in general, what you see here is a canvas that you can navigate left and right. Plus, what you see here are the collections of the variables that you have made. We made in the previous step. When you click on one of them, you can see all the variables list here within this group section, and the mode that you define. I guess we don't have any other mode for any of them. Yeah, you just don't see the list of the variables, but you can play around here directly. You can connect a specific variable to the other variable, but when you click on each variable here, you can see that what are the connection or relationship between this variable and the other variable that we have. For example, we use the value of this variable as a value for this variable here, so they are connected to each other. And if you change the value for this one, these variables are going to change as well. We can adjust this stuff by easily dragging our mouse, clicking and dragging our mouse from one of this output of this variable and then connect it to input of the variable that we want, what we would like to connect this one to that one. So this is the way that we can create a connection between variables, and using this variable visualizer, we can adjust the stuff much easier. Here we can do even more. Let's right click on the empty space of the canvas. When you do that, you can create collection. If you click on the first option, and you can see that this collection is like this, you can directly create a variable within this collection. For example, I'm going to make it one color variable. Let's rename it to, I don't know, button. We can continue creating variables here. You can use it for creating your component level variable. For example, we can I don't know, change the collection to component. In order to understand how you can create a proper architecture, you can search for that in the internet. You can find the proper people that are teaching a proper naming convention, the token architecture and everything else. You can find important information that how you build your component level, semantic level, and primitive level of your tokens, and how you manage them. Here I don't want to show that. I just want to see what exactly we can do with this plugin. So as you see, we can easily create different collection and different variables for each collection. Let me see what else we can do. For example, here we have add color scale generator. Okay, that's amazing. We can create a new collection here. And what we need to do is very simple. We can connect the output of this color scale generator to input of this collection, and then it will automatically create the variables that are needed to store the value of the scaling that we have done. It's very cool. I have to say it's gonna save a lot of time from you. Instead of generating the scalings yourself, you can use, for example, this node, or we have more nodes actually. For example, the font size generator node. You can do the same thing for the spacing. You can do the same for opacity. These are helping you to create a dynamic and a live connection between your variables. For example, if I change now the value of our primary color, you can see that dynamically the scaling is happening as well, and the variable that we had here are going to have different values. And at the end, as an always, I mentioned also before, we should be able to share our variables with the dev team or other way around. So basically we should be able to get variables from the dev team as well, so they can also work on their end, and then we get their values, and the design here should get updated as well. Here we have a bunch of feature we can find in this burger menu, which is going to help us to do the same thing. So we can import the variables from the JSON file that we can get from the dev team or the CSS, or we can export it to the same JSON file or other format that exists. Or we can even connect it to the GitHub, which will help us to push or pull the changes easier. I'll leave the link to these two plugins in the description of this video. Let me know what do you think about this too. Let me know if you are using this kind of stuff within your design process, if you are building a design library and design system, and share your experience with me as well. There's one point I want to mention, that I started to share design challenges in the YouTube community section and in the Discord server. I try to do it in every week, meaning that it's a kind of a weekly design challenge. Share your designs with me if you want me to show your designs within the videos of this channel. That was it. Let's learn together and see you in the next video.